Hello. Welcome to class, I guess. So I'm John BenderWaffles Aljets, and today we are going to be covering proper home brewing techniques for like doing homebrew stuff. Specifically races is what we're going to be looking at today. I'm turning off chat on screen because this is going to be uploaded to YouTube after this is all over, so we don't need that. Plus it just gets in the way. Okay, so today we are going to be creating 3 races based off of Final Fantasy X. We are going to be creating a playable race for the Albed, a playable race for the Ronso, and a playable race for the Guado. Why am I doing this? Because I want to. A couple of things before we get into this. First and foremost, this is kind of going to be done informally, in case you hadn't noticed. I'm doing it via live stream instead of a YouTube video. So anyways, which by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, twitch.tv/BenderWaffles. There's a link for that in the description. If you're watching this live on Twitch though, welcome. If you see me looking over here, I'm either checking chat or I'm checking some notes that I have. I have done some prep, some work on these races beforehand, so I'm not sitting here hemming and hawing the whole time while we do this. So yeah, let's get into it. So again, we're going to be doing the 3 races, and when you're doing races within Dungeons and Dragons, it's a good idea to have a very strong idea of who they are, obviously. Whether it's a custom race or you're doing like we're doing today, where you're adapting something, you need to have an idea of their culture, of their physiology, all that sort of stuff, so that you can kind of implement that into their creation. Also, another thing that is a good idea to have is pretty strong knowledge of, at the very least, the races in the player's handbook. The reason why is because those are the races that sort of set the standard for power level. You don't necessarily want to be creating races that are too overly powerful, that make the races in this book look like child's play, because then when you present your players with these races, there's going to be no reason for them to choose the baseline races outside of aesthetic choices, which you just want to avoid that. At the same time, you also want to avoid creating races that are so underpowered that playing them is pointless. So try to aim for the level in here. That being said, what I'm going to be presenting you guys with today is pre-play test stuff. So this is stuff that hasn't been play tested. This is stuff that nobody else has really had a look at. I mean, I am doing this live, so I guess some people have had a look at it, but if these races wind up too powerful or not powerful enough, that's fine, because they're first draft. Through the process of play testing, they would then get refined and fixed up. So don't leave me a bunch of comments down below being like, that race is overpowered, idiot. Like, don't do that. First of all, that's rude. And second of all, that's just uncalled for, completely and totally. So today I'm going to be using this bit of software here. It is called the Homebrew. It is a online software. It's in browser. You can go to thehomebrewery.naturalcrit.com and follow along if you want to. Just create an account and it's totally free. Allows you to get in there and just make your homebrew. I use this for layout purposes, but then when I actually release something, I do all of the final version of the PDF myself in, I do it in Photoshop. Most people do it in either Illustrator or Publisher, but I'm weird. And speaking of which, when this is all said and done, I am going to release these races. Oops. When this is all said and done, I am going to release these races over on my Discord. So you'll be able to jump over there and download them when this is all over for use in your own games, if you want to. So let's get started. We're going to start things off with the Albed. Now, Homebrewery here uses some like very HTML-y scripting language. I have over on my second window, I have kind of a cheat menu. I have another homebrew that I have open so that I can make sure that stuff looks nice. You don't necessarily need to, but I do because I'm kind of all about stuff looking nice, which is why you would think at a certain point I would learn to not use cap lock, but it is not this day. All right, so Al Bhed come up first. Now, normally when you're outlining something, you'd come up with like a description and everything for them, but we're not going to worry about that because if you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you already have a pretty solid understanding of Final Fantasy X. And if you don't, that's fine too. The Al Bhed being the sort of humanoid race that uses Machina and all this jazz. We'll talk more about who they are later. So the first thing to start off with, at least the first thing that I always start off with, is the ability score increase. Races within Dungeons and Dragons, in case you don't know, in which case, if you don't know this, why are you watching this? They all grant bonuses to your ability scores, depending on which ones you choose. Usually the format is +2 to one major stat and +1 to one minor stat. There are some races that vary there. Humans immediately come to mind. Humans within the player's handbook get, I think it's +1 to every stat or something like that. And I think goblins get -1 to intelligence. They don't normally do minuses. It's normally bonuses, and they don't ever really give anything more than +2 to any one stat. That seems to be kind of just the rule of thumb, as it were. So with Al Bhed, this is one of the things that I actually did beforehand. I did figure out at least Al Bhed. They're going to get intelligence +2. So let's give them, this isn't proper language for this format, but that's fine. So we're going to give them, I misspelled intelligence too. So we're going to give them intelligence +2, and Al Bhed are also most often seen being sort of rogue pirate-like characters. So giving them a dexterity bonus works as well, and they're going to get that +1. So again, that is following the So once again, that is following the sort of standard that you see in the player's handbook with a +2 to a major stat and +1 to a minor stat. So there. And the reason why I went with intelligence over something like wisdom is because there is a class called the Artificer that exists within Dungeons and Dragons now. It debuted in Eberron Rising from the Last War. And its main spellcasting stat is intelligence. Now, Al Bhed should probably be built from the ground up to be good artificers. And that's one of the major things that we're doing here is we're increasing their intelligence. So after the ability score is, I have this in my notes, age. So this is one of those like kind of just flavor stats that we give, but it is still important because it does flesh out who exactly the race is. So the Al Bhed are basically humans. So let's say something along the lines of Al Bhed reach maturity around age 18 and live about 70 years, roughly. Again, you'd flower up the language a little bit, just to kind of make it seem a little bit nicer. But for the sake of this, we're just making it real simple, just cutting to the chase, as it were. Okay, so next up after age is alignment. Again, this is another one of those sort of, more aesthetic, more flowery kinds of things. It's not necessary to the playability of the race. Something about alignment, especially within 5th edition, is that it's very fluid. Old editions of Dungeons and Dragons, if you broke out of your alignment, you had to face major penalties. Within 5th edition, alignment doesn't really matter. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm going to leave it up to you. But so alignment here in regards to races is more of a suggestion than anything. A lot of times it's just like, oh, oh, this race tends to be evil, or this race tends to follow the law a little bit closer than some others. But that doesn't mean that you can't take that race and make that inherently evil race make a good character, and you can't take that inherently lawful character or race and make a chaotic character from them. It doesn't really work that way. Again, it's more of a suggestion, but let's just go into this. Albed. So the Albed race, they're kind of outcasts from society, so that sort of lends itself to them being not really on the lawful side of things, especially because they also like kidnap people, and they raid old Machina sites, and they go against the laws of Yevon. So Albed completely disregard the commonly accepted laws of Spira. I should learn how to spell. I write for a living, I swear. Commonly accepted laws of Spira and openly defy, again, spelling John, and openly defy the Church of Yevon. Therefore, they tend towards the chaotic side of things. Yeah, that's where we're going to end their alignment description. Next up is size. Now, this is the first one that actually does have an effect on gameplay. Mainly the last sentence of the description is the gameplay part. All the rest of it is froofy, aesthetic stuff. So size. Albed stand anywhere between, 5 feet to 6.5 feet. Sure, they're humans. So, that's a pretty average range. And weigh, let's think about this. Let's think about the language in this. I don't know. Around 180 pounds on average. Now, here's that important gameplay sentence. Your size is medium. Within Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, your race's size affects things like your carry weight. How much can you push and pull? Things like that. A general rule of thumb with creating races is small or medium. Those are really your two choices. It's kind of I don't know if it's necessarily an unwritten rule because they're pretty upfront and blatant about it, but Wizards of the Coast has gone on record to say that they don't want to create large characters because that affects game balance. That's why you'll see them make a race like the Luxodon, these giant elephant people, and be like, oh yeah, that giant elephant person is size medium, so he's in the same size bracket as a normal human. But it's like, because creating a large character unbalances things. It unbalances carry weight and it unbalances quite a few of those sort of things that, look, it's things that only people who are like diehard rules lawyers really pay attention to, but you have to take those people into account when you're making things. So don't do large for that reason. Just on the same side of things, don't create a tiny race. So like a fairy would probably fall under small as opposed to tiny, because then things unbalance in the opposite direction. They become underpowered. So just stay away from that. As I said, keep things in the small to medium range. The majority of your races are probably going to be medium, unless you're creating like gnomes or goblins or something like that. You're going to be going with medium. So, okay. After that, after size, we get into the actual after size, we get into languages. That's the next most important. Or is languages last? Languages are last. What the hell am I smoking? Okay, so this is when we get into the actual racial abilities. So the first one that we want to do with the Albed So the Albed being very like mechanically centered people, it's important for them to have sort of proficiencies in the more techie side of things. There's a variant rule within 5th edition called firearms proficiency. Firearms don't really exist within the world of 5th edition, within the Forgotten Realms, the sort of base setting. But some settings do allow for firearms. And so there are rules in place for firearms. So I think that it would be smart when it comes to the Albed to give them firearm proficiency. So let's name this ability. Give it some flavorful name like Ancient Firepower. Or no, Ancient Firepower is nice, but playing into the idea of the sort of forbidden machina, forbidden firepower. You have again, someday I'm going to learn how to spell proficiency with firearms. But let's not stop there. Another thing that you can have proficiency with is vehicles. You can be particularly adept at sailing boats. You can be particularly adept at like running war machines and things of that nature, which is very much a Albedi trait. Albedi being a correct adjective here. So let's also give them with firearms and vehicles, land and sea. So that's pretty good. They have proficiency with firearms regardless of their class. So you could create a Albed fighter, go with the ranged fighting type and use guns, and you've created a gunslinger. There are also homebrew gunslinger classes that you could also run. I think Matt Mercer has rules in place for how he does gunslingers. If you wanted to follow those, you can find them online. Simple Google search. All right. So normally when you're looking at, the racial features, you're looking at 2 to 3 depending on how powerful the racial features are. So let's give them another racial feature. People in chat, what do you think that I should give to the Albed? Actually, Pandarium has he pointed this out as a joke, but there's a really solid point, is that the Albed, while they have a place called home, are largely nomadic. So let's think about this here for a second. If we were to give somebody like a nomadic kind of trait, what would that look like? I actually think that I did something like this in one of the races that I made for a setting that I'm working on. Let's see if I can find it. I created a nomadic feature. I'm trying to find it. Boop, doop, doo, doo, doop, doo. Which one had this? Nope, that wasn't. Nope, there it is. Nomadic upbringing. You have movement penalty. You do not have a movement penalty across difficult terrain. That could be certainly a solid one. Their eyes are a big indicator of their heritage. Have advantage on disguise checks or something. I mean, I think that their eyes would give them a disadvantage on disguise checks, which within 5e you want to kind of avoid penalizing people for choosing a race. That's sort of meant to be left up to the DM. But you could definitely give them, actually, because outside of the eyes, they do just look human. So maybe that's another thing that we could go with. Let's go with that. Blending in. Albed look nearly identical to their human cousins, save for their unique eyes. You have advantage. Because even though I would say as a DM that it's a disadvantage with the eyes, but you would say that, you know, you have advantage on disguise. This language isn't correct. On disguise checks when trying to blend in with a human population. Again, the language there is not correct, but that gives you an idea. It can be cleaned up and made a little better. That's a very, very situational feature. So let's go back to this nomadic sort of thing, and let's give them a third feature. Nomadic lifestyle. And as I said, I added that one in a previous thing that I did, so I'm going to try to just paste that in and just basically use that verbatim. That's another thing that I think is important is, oops, that's my Discord. Don't be afraid to just take features from other races or even like other bits of homebrew that you've seen to work within your own homebrew. If you're going to like be selling the homebrew on the Dungeon Masters Guild or whatever, then maybe don't do that. But you know, don't be afraid if you're making something for a home game or you're making something that you're going to put out on the internet for free. Don't be afraid to get in there and, you know, sort of borrow stuff from other things, either other things that you've created or other things that other people have created. One of the most popular ways of creating a new race is to take a race that already exists and just reskin it. Like literally like all the same stats and everything, and just, you know, so take like elves in Dungeons and Dragons and reskin them to be elves from the Elder Scrolls. You know, you could take a wood elf from Dungeons and Dragons, reskin it and make it into a Bosmer. And while that's a pretty like 1-to-1 transfer, but you're getting the idea. I would probably do like go online and search for like half ogres and you could reskin them to be Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings. That would probably be a pretty solid one. You know, just stuff like that. You know, don't be afraid to do that. As Professor Frankly down in chat is saying, it is free. It's okay. So yeah, if you're releasing this for free, it's totally okay. Totally fine. Just don't be afraid to do that as you're creating. In fact, I highly encourage you to take a look at what else is out there and see what you can borrow or what you can adapt to do your own thing. Okay, so the Albed, their sort of like basic racial features are looking pretty solid. They're a little underpowered, I feel, compared to the SRD races, but that's fine. This is an okay starting point for this race. So now after the race features, this is when we get into languages. Languages tends to be the last thing unless you have sub races, which we're going to get into sub races here in a little bit. So, you know, let's just kind of let's figure out. So obviously Albed speak Common, which is the Dungeons and Dragons phrase for English or whatever the sort of most commonly spoken language is Common. Kind of just represents the language that your table speaks. It is the most common language. And they also probably speak, obviously, Albed. So you can speak, read, and write Common and Albed. And then if you're playing with these people at the table, if you want to like sprinkle in the gameplay mechanic of the Albed primers, go for it. There are a ton of websites online for translating, you know, stuff into Albed and vice versa. So, you know, if you are playing with the Albed in your game, just flavor it up. Go nuts. All right, so now that we got the Albet out of the way, let's move on to the next race. And this one I have a bit less prepped for, so this one I'm going to take a little bit more from the audience here about what I should do, and that is we are going to do the Ronso. Good old Kimari's race, the blue cat people. So, Ronso. Ability score increase. Let's sit here and let's think about the Ronso and what we know about the Ronso. If you don't know much about the Ronso, I would suggest going over to the Final Fantasy Wiki and diving in and reading a little bit. As I said, when you're creating a race, it's a good idea to get a very strong feel for their culture and for their physiology, and just know about them. So the Ronso they're cat people. They're very, very bestial kind of beings. They're strong and they're fast. Those are the two things that immediately come to mind, but they are also fairly wise. The Ronso are, as a culture, tend to be very religious, following under the Church of Yevon pretty strongly. So a wisdom score increase might not be outside of the realm of possibility. Being cat people, your initial instinct might be to immediately give them a dexterity increase. But in this case, I'm kind of thinking Ronso are big and strong. So let's give them strength +2 because they're big. They're giant cat people with horns. So let's give them a strength +2 and let's give them a wisdom +1. Just because they might not necessarily be at first glance, they might not seem like the most wise and, sort of intelligent beings in the traditional sense. But I think that based on their natural sort of proclivity towards their religion, wisdom makes sense. You could also just swap that out for dexterity. And it's sort of, again, it's one of those things that you play with during playtesting. See what works best. So, ability score increase, strength +2, wisdom +1. Let's go with an age. This is one thing that I'm not actually 100% sure on with the Ronso. So let's go over to the wiki and let's see. Let's see if they say anything about their age. Well, we know that they stand 2 meters in height, so that's going to help with the size. They refer to their young as pups. Helpful. Doesn't really tell us much about age. We do know that Kimari Ronso has been watching over Yuna for a very long time, so it's pretty safe to assume that he is been around for a while. So let's just pull some numbers out of our butt right now. Ronso and chat, if you're watching this, if you have any insight on this that I don't, feel free to throw it out there. Reach maturity. Again, I'm just making this one up. Around age, 14. And live about, let's go 100 years. They might have a shorter lifespan than that. They might have a shorter lifespan than humans. But it's not really something that they talk about. Now, if we were making the black mages from Final Fantasy IX, that age would be very short. If you haven't played Final Fantasy IX, the black mages like Vivi have a life expectancy of about a year. It's like a year or two, I think, actually. So that's depressing. So alignment. Ronso are, again, being very much aligned with the Church of Yevon, but also they're very lawful, but also they are extremely sort of tribe focused, pact focused, whatever it is. So that also lends them more towards the lawful side of things. So let's go. Ronso highly value both their tribes and the church, lending themselves towards falling on the more lawful side of the spectrum. Now, if you want like a good explanation of how alignment really works, Joe Cat over on YouTube just put out a video a few days ago about the different alignments and sort of what they actually mean. And I highly recommend watching that video. One, because it's just funny as hell. And two, because it's probably the most like accurate description of the alignment chart, at least in terms of like what the wording actually means. Because a lot of people, when they think of like a lawful good paladin, they're thinking like, oh, that's someone who follows all the laws to the T and, you know, is just this goody goody two shoes. And you could play that like that. That would be a solid way of doing it. But a lawful good paladin could also be someone who's just like, I have a moral code and I'm going to stick to it completely and totally and not really care about the laws of man. It really depends on the way that you want to play it. Go watch that video. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have a link to it down in the description. Okay, so we have their alignment. Now let's get into their size. Again, this is one of those things where the wiki comes in handy. The wiki tells us that the Ronso are about 2 meters in height and the males are considerably larger than the females, who possess a faster and more athletic body type. This is the sort of stuff that we can put into the size thing, and it gives us information about the race. So let's do exactly that. So we like to keep things in Imperial within Dungeons and Dragons for some reason. Stand roughly 2 meters is about 6 feet ish. Stand roughly 6 feet in height on the low end. Males are considerably larger than their female counterparts. Or in the case of the Final Fantasy 11 version of the Ronso, the Hrothgar, the females just don't exist apparently. So yeah, their weight, we aren't really going to talk about it. You can kind of just fill that in from there. Your size is medium. So again, this falls into you could make an argument for a Ronso being large. They are big, bestial cat dudes, but gameplay wise, they're medium. So there you go. Okay, now on to their racial abilities. Let's jump back over the wiki and get an idea. So think to yourself, like, what are the Ronso? We've got some pictures of some Ronso here. These are early concept art designs of the Ronso. Get an idea of like, what do you think these guys probably do? These are big, scary, intimidating people. So let's jump over here to Roll20 because I know that there is a feature that some races have. I think I misspelled presence. I did. Called Intimidating Presence. Am I misspelling intimidating? Or is Roll20 just dumb? Could be the Roll20 is just dumb. But anyways, some races have a feature called Intimidating Presence, which I actually think some of my races in my supplement have. Yes, one of them does. What Intimidating Presence does is it actually affects your, just type aura. Actually, that would do it. So Intimidating Presence, it actually allows you to add your strength modifier to intimidation skill checks instead of charisma. So if you're a big, beefy, burly dude like a Ronso, your strength is going to factor into your ability to get people to do what you want. So we are going to give him Intimidating Presence, and I am straight up just going to copy this straight across because, as I said, I had it in one of my things. Again, this goes back to the don't be afraid to, to borrow from other things. Intimidating Presence I believe, is a base skill of orcs, and it might be a half orc ability. Let me double check that real quick. If I can find it in time. No, they do not have intimidating presence, but they do have relentless endurance and savage attacks. Kind of the same sort of basic idea. Which actually, a half orc, now that I'm looking at it, you could probably pretty easily skin a half orc to be a Ronso. Talking about skinning races, reskinning races to fit new things. But with the Ronso, another thing about them that we see in the game very briefly in a cutscene, I believe, is the Ronsos have claws, like very sharp claws. So what if we gave them a bonus to their melee attacks, like, and horns? Yeah, they've got a lot of like very sharp, pointy things. So what if we give them a bonus to unarmed attacks? Like maybe their unarmed attacks deal, I don't know. Let's look through here. I've got a list of features that other races do. Hold up. And let's find. So let's do sort of something like this. I'm going to call this Kitty Got Claws. I don't think that I would call it that in a final piece, but Kitty Got Claws. You are proficient with unarmed strikes, which deal 1d4 plus your strength modifier slashing damage on hit. Let's go with that. So I'm going to change up the language on this because I'm copying this from somewhere else. 1d4 plus your strength. No, wait, that's what proficiency means. Duh. So which deal 1d4 slashing damage on a hit. So there you go. Now Kitty's got claws. And that already is pretty freaking powerful. You've got a really good RP ability with intimidating presence. Kitty's got claws gives you a bonus in combat, even though you're probably not really going to be using unarmed strikes too much. So maybe let's think about giving them one more very simple, very clean, very like low powered ability. Let's think about the Ronso here and what we could do that's sort of a on the lower end of things. Let's do something with that, with them being kind of a bit religious. Let's try to think of a feature that we can do that we can, or no, you know what? I've got an idea. They live up on top of Mount Gagazet. So I'm going to borrow this skill from another supplement that I did that fits them like a glove. And that is, bam, they have thick fur. They are resistant to cold damage. Resistant, not immune. They still take cold damage and they'll still, die out in the cold, but they're resistant to cold damage. And Pandaria, I see down in chat, mentioned that as well. So, bam. Kitty has claws. Kitty has fur. Kitty's scary. So, that's the Ronso for you. Now, language. So, they can read and write common, obviously. But what else? We got this section here on the wiki. Talks about Ronso language. Despite superficial appearances, the Ronso are capable of speaking in the same way as humans, as Mr. Kelk shows. In fact, their seemingly crude use of grammar is deliberate. As with many cultures in real life, when forced to adopt a foreign language, people often shape it to better represent them. The Ronso avoid the use of personal pronouns, such as I, you. So it doesn't seem that there's actually a Ronso language. So we could just give them just common, and that would work. And in fact, that's kind of what I'm going to go with because they are a little bit more of a simpler race. You could also choose to give them like you can read or you can speak, read, and write common and one other language of your choice. So give your player an option to play with there. But again, the Ronso being a more simple people, I'm just going to stick them with common. Now let's move on into the the third one, which I am okay. So we're going to do Guado now. The Guado people being the race of people that Seymour is. And I am purposefully choosing to sort of bend them a little bit to fit this tutorial. So one thing that I haven't yet covered race-wise that is incredibly important because it pops up a lot is sub-races. Now, the Guado, at face value, don't have any sub-races. And in fact, when it comes to Final Fantasy X races in general, none of them do. You know, you could make an argument like, oh, they're mountain Ronso and they're urban Ronso or like whatever, but it's like, they're the same people. But with the Guado, we have literally one example in the entire game of a Guado who is slightly different from the rest. And that is Seymour. Seymour, of course, being a half Guado. So I've decided, for the purposes of this tutorial video thing here, that the Guado are going to come in two variations, pure blood and half blood. So let's kind of get into the differences of how you handle a race that's going to have a sub race. So the Guado, when you're doing a sub race, your ability score is usually done a little bit different. Usually what you'll do is you'll give a primary score, and then each of these sub races will get a separate secondary score. So with the Guado, they are, they're very much, their entire race is built around religion. So we're going to give them wisdom +2 right off the bat. So their entire race gets wisdom +2. And then the individual sub races are going to get their individual things. We'll talk about those when we get to them. Age, I'm pretty sure the Guado are either extremely long-lived or extremely short-lived. I need to remember this here. Guado do not seem to leave behind bodies when dead. I mean, the far plane is a thing that exists. Wasn't Jiskel Guado like really old? No. I'm trying to remember here. This is information. Yeah, they're long-lived, I think. They're tied to the Macalania Woods. Yeah. I'm kind of curious if that necessarily affects their age. Stuff like that, you kind of have to extrapolate out yourself because when you're doing something like this where you're adapting a race from something else, some of this stuff isn't as covered. And especially when it comes to something like the Final Fantasy X races where we've had 2 games set in the world. So there isn't a ton of extra material that you can go to check out, but that's fine. So I'm going to go with Pandarium's little suggestion there in chat. They're long-lived because they're connected to Macalania Woods. So Guado, but I'm going to do something interesting. So Guado reach maturity around age. I'm going to go really young with the age that they reach maturity around, but then they live a really long time. That's the idea that I'm thinking. Guado reach maturity around age 12 and live roughly 120 years. Why not? Again, that's something that it's just flavor. It doesn't really matter gameplay wise, but it's there. So alignment, Guado are all about that Church of Yevon. In fact, that's what I'm going to say. Guado are all about the Church of Yevon. However, it is important to note that the Guado differ from the Ronso, in that the Ronso, their following of the Church of Yevon kind of tends them towards the lawful side of things. The Guado have shown in the games on multiple occasions that members of their society are willing to do whatever, including bending and breaking the rules of the church to get power. So, however, many value their own level of power over that of their religion. Therefore, they tend towards the more neutral and even evil sides of the spectrum. Again, there's nothing stopping you from making a good Guado. There's nothing stopping you from making an evil Albed. There's nothing stopping you from making an evil Ronso. We see some of them. They're just, it's flavor. It's a suggestion, not a rule. Okay, so size. Guado are big. I do remember that. They are a bit bigger than humans. Oops, why am I typing in, how am I typing in two places? That's new. Okay. Guado are a tad bit bigger than your average adult human. They stand roughly 6.5 feet tall and weigh, I'm not going to bother with weight. You can figure out weight on your own. Your size is medium. I just went cross-eyed for that. Okay. Your size is medium. So let's think about this here. When you're doing a sub race, this is where the split occurs. So, although sometimes it can actually, no, language is where the split occurs. So let's think of the languages that the Guado can speak. Do the Guado have their own language? I don't think they do. I don't think that pops up in the game at all. So I'm going to guess that the Guado don't have their own language, but they are a much more educated race than some. So, and one additional language of your choice. So that gives the player some agency in their creation process. They can get in there and they can kind of tweak things and make that character their own. That is the important thing about Dungeons and Dragons, is you want to make the characters your own. So now this is where the break happens. So you've got your sub races. Guado come in two different varieties. Pure blood and half blood. Again, they don't in the game, but that's how we're doing it here. Okay, so I need to think of formatting here, even though formatting is really not that important. So let's do pure blood first, because that's the majority of the Guado. So the Guado, which if I say Guado enough, eventually the word's going to stop meaning anything. Although I would point out that it doesn't really mean anything to most people. So the Guado are extremely religious people. So let's have a feature for that. And luckily enough, I have a race that is very religious. Religious zealotry. Let's give them that. They gain proficiency in religion, which is very much a RP skill. Not exactly the most powerful thing in existence, but you know, there it is. They have proficiency in that. What else makes you think, hey, that's a Guado? Like, what can a Guado do? Once again, going back to this, what am I? I'm completely forgetting about speed on these guys. What am I doing? I've been completely forgetting this for all the races. This is something that everyone needs to have. Chat, you are really not good at calling me out on my screw ups. What the heck, guys? Come on now. Speed. So speed is exactly what you think it is. It is how fast do they move. So the standard, the sort of, baseline speed is 30 feet. That means that within combat, they can move 5 squares, or they can dash up to 10 squares. Or no, it's 6 squares and up to 12. Yeah, because math. 5 divided, because each square is 5 feet. You know what? Whatever. It's a gameplay thing. You need it in there. So the Albed can move 30 feet. The Ronso can also move 30 feet because they aren't any slower or any faster. And the Guado here are super fast. So we're going to give them 35 feet. So they can move 1 more square every turn. That's a very Guado thing to do. Okay. Thank God that I saw that random thing on the wiki, or else I would feel very stupid. Okay. They have a religious culture, which causes them to come across as arrogant. Their role as guardians of the far plane have led them to look down on other races. We can work that in, but one thing that I'm actually remembering is I need the secondary ability score increase for the sub race. I'm getting all weird right now. So anyways, the ability score increase for the purebloods, they get a plus 1, 2, charisma would be a solid one, but I think that I want to save that for the half-blood, because again, we're basically making, when we do a half-blood, we're basically just making an entire race for Seymour. So what do you think a base Guado would be good at in terms of ability scores? Also, the Guado tend to keep their promises to themselves, so they're not like a super talky sort of people. They kind of keep to themselves. You know what? Because they are so fast, intelligence would make sense. But as I was saying, because they're so fast, dexterity is not a incorrect one to possibly go with. We haven't necessarily seen any like examples of them being ninjas or anything in the game. But you know what? I think that just for the sake of moving on, I'm going to listen to chat, and we are going to go. Actually, no, yeah, they can't outrun you. So dexterity. That's one of those things that might get changed in playtesting. I'm not going to playtest this. Let's be real. I'm not going to. Unless somebody in chat really wants to do a Final Fantasy X based campaign, in which case, get at me. So this is bugging me more than it should. So hang on a second. I got to do some formatting stuff because it's bugging me. How the heck do I do that again? There it is. Okay. Whew. That was annoying. All right. So they gain religious zealotry, and let's think of something else. So we don't really know a ton about the Guado. Here's something that we do know about the Guado. Look at these dudes. They're very like tree-like. So maybe that guy's not so tree-like. That dude's pretty tree-like. So maybe they've got, I don't know why I'm seeing something from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Okay. So maybe they've got like tough skin. Again, they are very much connected to Macalania Woods. So let's go with Purebloods having, I don't know why I went to my downloads. So let's go with them having like a tough skin. So they gain like a bonus to their, they gain a bonus to their natural AC as long as they aren't wearing armor. So I actually have here an ability called Bark Skin. Eventually, I'm going to release this supplement that I have on the second window, and everyone's going to look at that and go like, oh, so that's where he's getting all of these racial features that he's just copying and pasting in. And suddenly it's all going to make sense. Also, by the way, if you want to check out my supplements, DM's Guild. I have one up there called Forgotten Races Volume 1. Get at it. It's pay what you want so you can get it for free. Please don't, though. Buy it. Anyways, self-plug aside. So that's a pretty powerful skill, especially for a race that might be more casterly. Having when you're not wearing heavy armor, you get +1 to your AC. That's pretty good. So I'm not going to give them another feature because I think that is dope AF, as the kids would say. So, God dang it, I am an idiot. Half-Blood. Ability score increase. Woo! This is going a lot faster than I anticipated. I thought we'd be here in about 2 hours. I'm also talking really quick. So Half-Bloods. This one's going to get a charisma bonus. Charisma +1. Man, and I got to go through and I got to edit all this. YouTube.com/C/BenderWaffles. Okay. Or /U. It's /C, I think. I don't know. Just go watch me on YouTube. Anyways. So, Half-Bloods. Half-Bloods are much more of a, like, at least again, I'm thinking in terms of Seymour Guado, are much more evil people. He doesn't have the tough skin of his pure blood countertypes because that's where he gets sort of his human traits. For those of you who don't know Seymour Guado, that's what he looks like. That's Seymour Guado. So just looking at this fool, I mean, his stomach hair immediately jumps out. His regular hair also definitely jumps out. He does have sharp fingertips, so there is an argument that could be made for giving him, although so did the regular Guado. So let's think here. Now you'll note that when you're homebrewing, a lot of it is just sitting there thinking. And maybe, looking up other things and trying to find your inspiration. But let's think about this here for this guy. Maybe giving him a bonus to deception would be good. Because he's a pretty shifty dude. And he manages to hide in the Church of Yevon, hide his evilness and hide his unsentness for quite a while. So let's go. I don't want to go to the well of taking stuff from my supplement again, but this works really well for him. So we're going to give this guy this ability called Natural Subterfuge. You are proficient in your choice of 2 of the following skills. Acrobatics doesn't really work for Seymour, but could work for a half-blood Guado that isn't Seymour. Following skills: acrobatics, deception, stealth, and sleight of hand. So he's like kind of talking his way out. He's like trying to he's a bard. He's a College of Deception bard. That's basically what the Half-Blood kind of plays towards. You don't normally want to be designing races that only really work with one specific type of character, but sometimes that can be fun. And with sub-races are a great way of giving your players the ability to more specialize what type of character they're wanting to play. So there's just more options on options on options on options. That's why there's so many races out there. You don't want to be playing a at-home game unless you're playing a game with all humans, because humans are so malleable that they can be any possible type of character. You don't want to be playing an at-home game with like 3 races. Like, you're not going to sit there and be like, hey, we're playing a Spira-based game and we're only allowing the Albed, Ronso, and Guado. You're going to get the 3 archetypes of Albed, Ronso, and Guado. You're going to get a rogue, a fighter, and probably a bard or cleric. That's all you're going to get. So if your races are a little more specialized, that's fine. Again, it's what you're making for yourself. Is anyone else having the stream cut out, or do I just need to go downstairs and whack my router? I hope you just need to go downstairs and whack your router. Anybody else having problems? Anybody? You're fine with me at the moment. Have I been fine with you at the moment the entire time? Good. Because I'm not recording this. I'm relying on Twitch's built-in video requirement. Okay, so natural subterfuge. You are proficient in your choice of 2 of the following skills. So what else? That's pretty powerful. That's pretty good. So what else about Seymour? More Hypello representation. I thought about including the Hypello in this tutorial, but I figured that, again, I was expecting this to take a lot longer than it's taking. I was expecting to not be on the Guado until like the 2-hour mark, and I'm at 1 hour and 16 minutes in this live stream. So 1 hour and a minute, because I had a 15 minutes countdown timer. So maybe if you are wanting it, I'll do Hypello at the end of the stream. But so what else about a Guado Half-Blood are we thinking? So let's actually just go to Seymour's page, because again, he's our example. He's a high priest, he's a skilled mage and summoner himself. He's got tattoos. He's human. Oh, are those supposed to be veins on his stomach? I just thought he had really crazy stomach hair. He is courteous and affable and popular among Yevonites, hence the charisma bonus. Seymour is nihilistic in his views on life. When confronted, he drops the pretense and reveals his true nature as an arrogant and cruel man. Does he have feelings for Summoner Yuna, or does he just want to like nail her because of who her dad is? So I think that sentence there is a little incorrect. Or maybe, I don't know. If we could come up with a racial feature that allows him to turn into a giant wall. I want a Seymour figure just so I can burn it. I hate this guy so much. Pandarium seems to have an idea. He's chatting. Oh, Pandarium being the legend of this. Give him the "Why won't you die?" Actually, give him advantage on death throws. That is busted. But once again, going back to the well of another supplement that I've been working on, I have an ability called Undying. When you are reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, and the damage is not radiant or from a critical hit, you can drop to 1 hit points instead. You can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. That is the most disgustingly accurate thing that we could possibly give him. Because this dude, you fight him like 9 times or some crazy amount. I actually think it's only like 6. 5 or 6, I think. I need to play through the game a while. It's been a year. For those of you who don't know, Final Fantasy X is my favorite Final Fantasy game. Officially my favorite. For a while there, I was waffling back and forth between 9 and 10. But for me, it's 10. 10 all the way. It hits me in the feels. So hard. Okay. So waffling. I see what you did there. So yeah. I mean, that's busted, but Again, maybe in playtest, we would sort of play with that a little bit. Okay, so since I did this so fast, let's, no, John, bad John. The Hypello. The Hypello, I was not expecting to do in this live stream. I thought about doing it just as a bonus when I released the final races, but I guess the Hypello are now getting representation in the Adventurer's Guide to Spira. So the Hypello, this is the race that we know the least about. So this is going to be fun. The Hypello are a race of amphibious creatures in Final Fantasy X and X-2. The Hypello seem not to have grasped the common pronunciation in Spira, often lisping any words with an S. For example, she, yesh, converting some words into gibberish. For example, everybody, investigating, impossible. This is just fun. As well as ending most of their sentences with a questioning tone. They are agile in the water, but are not so nimble on dry land, walking at a torrid pace. Okay, that right there tells us a lot about this race and gives us a lot of potential. According to me, Ken, the Hypello have potential to be good blitzball players because of their natural swimming proficiency. But because of their lackadaisical disposition, they tend to not take part in competitive sports and pastimes. The Hypello are responsible for managing the shoe puff across the Moonflow. In Final Fantasy X-2, Toba will use Hypello as his functional and promotional assistants. A Hypello nicknamed Barkeep by the Gullwings works behind the bar in the cabin of the Celsius, and, much in the style of a true bartender, dispenses pieces of advice to several characters. The player can rest for free at their expense, and if done so once during the chapter, the player will view a scene in which Barkeep reveals his girlfriend, Darling. From then on, player may rename any of the 3 animals using the Gullwings trainer dress sphere by speaking with the couple. That's some real shit right there. All right, so Hypello. So these are just, I love these. I love these boys so much. So we're going to give them a dexterity bonus because they are really good at swimming. Although, let's think here. Dexterity bonus would make sense if they were in water. But you can't give them an ability score increase in one location. Huh. And they aren't that charismatic. Okay, so let's look at these boys. Oh, they dispense advice, so wisdom would be a good one. Could Constitution be a good one? We don't know a ton about them as a race. We don't know how much. Again, why am I looking at Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff? We don't know if they can take damage. We don't know if. You know what? I'm going to break a sort of unwritten rule. That's a good idea. I will definitely include that. I'm going to sort of break an unwritten rule here. Because remember how I was saying the standard when it comes to ability score increases is +2 to a major, +1 to a secondary. But I did specifically say that there are some races that change that. So the Hypello being these beings that are listening to everyone while they're riding the shoe puffs. In Final Fantasy X-2, they're giving advice and helping you out and like talking to you. They make great bartenders apparently. And because of their connection to animals, specifically the shoe puff, they might make really good druids. So I think you might know where I'm going with this. They are getting wisdom +3. Now, here's my logic on this. That's all they're getting. They aren't getting a +1 to another skill. So they're still getting a 3 ability score increase across the board. We're just putting into one specific stat. Now that might wind up being really busted, depending on the way that you build your character. You're going to wind up with a character who's like super good at casting spells, depending on what your spell casting class is. But again, that's where you figure it out in playtest. Maybe giving them a +1 to Constitution might work for you, but I'm doing this to show you that you can break these quote unquote rules. You can do things different from how they are in the player's handbook. You can do them different from how they are in Eberron Rising from the Last War. You can do them different from how they are in Xanathar's. You can do them different from Mordkainen's. You can do them different from the Midgard Heroes Handbook. You can do them different from whatever supplements have been released. You can do things differently, and you can do it your own way. So the High Pelo are getting Wisdom +3. That might change. It probably will change. Let's be real, because that might be busted. But anyways, let's move on. Let's move on here to their age. Now, the High Pelo strike me as the kind of people who probably don't live very long. They look like tadpoles. And like that immediately makes me think maybe they reach maturity at around a year. And maybe they're alive for 5, you know. They kind of just they're like houseflies. So High Pelo reach maturity around age 1 and live about 5 years. Really short lifespan. So you have a High Pelo character in your campaign. If your campaign lasts longer than 5 years, that High Pelo should age out. Actually, has anyone ever been in a campaign for so long that your characters would have physically died of old age? There has to be some games out there that have done that. Alignment. Okay, let's be real. High Pelo don't give a fuck. As long as you don't mess with their shoe puff, High Pelo don't give a damn about anything. They are kind of just, they're so lackadaisical. They're just so like, whatever, man. I'm just doing what I want to do. They are as neutral can neutral. So, as long as you are not messing with a High Pelo's, oops, what did I do? High Pelo's shoe puff. High Pelo tend to not care so much for the goings on of the world around them, nor their own place within it. Why do I keep hitting enter? Therefore, they are about as neutral as they come. Dope. I've heard of people doing games that have like year-long time skips between sessions, but I've never heard of game taking that long in real time. I think I read an article about a campaign that was going on for like 25 years or something like that. Some crazy amount of time. It was the same campaign with the same players, same DM. I mean, I think some of the players like shifted in and out, but it was like the same DM running a game. I think it was either weekly or monthly or something like that for like decades. That's some shit. Like that's some commitment. I have a hard time making it to bi-weekly games. Dragon Eye knows what I'm talking about. We haven't played in like a month. Even though everybody's at home. Okay, so that's what happens when I try to like schedule a game in the morning. If it was in the evening, I would make pretty much every single one of them. So alignment. Then we got size. I wish I could have friends who stick around for that long too. What is that emoji? I love it so much. Okay. Size. High Pelo or small. I don't think that they say specifically how small they are. But I mean, when you look at them in game, like look at them. They're like 4 feet tall max. So give them a bonus to riding. Trust me, I'm getting to that. Okay, so size. Hypellos stand at around 4 feet tall on the high end. Your size is small. Bam! Representation of a small race. I don't know what I'm doing with this hand, but this hand down here is like, look at that. I'm going crazy, guys. Okay. All right. So next up, we've got their speed. Hypello are going to get something. So your base walking speed is 20 feet. Your swimming speed is, I should need to look this up because I don't know what, I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know the rules on swimming in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition because it has basically never came up for me. So let me double check this here real quick. Special types of movements, jumping, high jump. Is there swimming? Swimming, while it's the same as climbing. Each foot of movement costs 1 extra foot. So I'm not going to put this into the speed. I'm going to make this a feature where they're going to not suffer a penalty while swimming. Or no, wait, unless a creature has a climbing or swimming speed. So that would make sense here. Your swimming speed they are fast. Like real fast. So your swimming speed is 40 feet. They are double as fast in water as they are on land. On land, they're real like, I'm a Hypello, just kind of doing my own thing. Yeah, I know there's a combat going on, but like, I'm just going to move slow, man. This is just, take it easy. They're the dude if the dude was a fantasy race. That's a Hypello. Okay, so stupidity aside, let's go ahead and let's get into their racial abilities. This is where we get into the cool Hypello bonus stuff. So Hypello, being very aquatic, they should probably get a bonus to, I don't know, maybe holding your breath. Maybe they have a creature can hold its breath for a number of minutes equal to 1 plus its Constitution modifier. Is the basic rules for 5e breath holding. So let's think here about how would we increase that? Because obviously the Hypello are water based, they're amphibious. So maybe we can double that. So let's go with a hold breath here. So maybe they can hold their breath for 2. So let's see. Equal to 2 plus its Constitution modifier, minimum 30 seconds. So you can hold your breath. I forgot the word for. A number of minutes equal to, actually, let's go 3 times. To 3 plus your Constitution modifier, minimum of 30 seconds. So even if you only have like a +1 to your Constitution, you would be able to hold your breath for 4 minutes. If you have no bonus Constitution at all, you're holding your breath for 3 minutes. Whereas a human who has no bonus or Constitution modifier, they're holding it for 1 minute. That makes sense? You're an amphibian, so like you get to do amphibious stuff. Okay, I like that. Minimum of 30 seconds. So if you get down to the point where like you have -3 Constitution bonus, that would put you down to 0. You're still going to be able to hold your breath for 30 seconds. So that's just explaining breath holding rules to you at this point. So let's jump in here and let's think about what else a sort of Hypello could do. A bonus to riding makes sense. But like, what would, how would that work here? So let's look up the rules for horse riding. Mounts and vehicles. So vehicle proficiency. So we could give them a proficiency bonus. So we could make it so that they have proficiency with mounted vehicles. So basically they get to add their proficiency bonus to control checks, things of that nature, to make sure that they have the animal under control. Shoe puff riding. You have proficiency with okay, the wording on that is wrong, but that's the basic idea. Both of those are pretty weak. But what else can we do with the Hypello? Honestly, balancing wise, because they got that +3 to wisdom, which could make them insane spellcasters. Mixology knows how to make a mean drink. They do have barkeep. But no, I think for gameplay balance, I think honestly that might be where we want to leave off, because being a being that has +3 to wisdom, a spell casting stat, they could wind up insane druids. Like, you could have Hypello druids who are just like, you know, shoop-de-whooping all over the place and just blowing stuff up. So I think that's kind of where I'm going to leave the Hypello features, just for the sake of what I'm thinking in terms of balance. They got a swimming speed increase. They can hold their breath for longer than most things. And they have a proficiency in riding animals. That's pretty dang good in terms of a race. So now they come down to the final thing, which is languages. You can speak, read, and write Common, but not very well and with a lisp. Okay, so there you go. That is our races of Spira. We've created the Albed, we've created the Ronso, and we've created the Hypello, because this went quicker than I thought. So, I've got homework for you. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or watch this on Twitch, what have you, I got homework for you. What I want you to do is I want you to go in and I want you to make a race. Extra bonus points if you can make a race for these people. You see them like twice in Final Fantasy X. They are the Pelu. However the heck you say that. It sounds Hawaiian and I don't want to like butcher a beautiful language. Yeah, make a race for these people if you want bonus points, or just make whatever race you want. And post it to my Discord. You know, get in there, get into the Just Chatting and post it. I want to see what you guys can make. I'm planning on having other tutorials in the future. Other Dungeons and Dragons based tutorials. How long can I procrastinate on the homework before bad things start to happen? I would just do it as soon as you can, Dragonite. If you can make that race tonight, awesome. If you make it a year from now, less awesome. But you know, or you just not do it. I'm not going to come after you. I'd prefer if you did it because engagement is awesome. But I am planning on doing other tutorials in the future. The easier place to start within homebrewing Dungeons and Dragons is backgrounds. And I kind of skipped that to go right to races because to me, races is the exciting bit of homebrewing. But I will go back and I'll teach you guys how to do character backgrounds. And maybe if this does well, I'll teach subclasses, archetypes, whatever the hell they're called. And maybe eventually someday full-on classes. Full-on classes is probably the most complicated bit of game design that you can do in regards to Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm not going to do that anytime soon, but maybe I will in the future. If you're watching this on YouTube, click that subscribe button. If you're watching this on Twitch, there's a follow button. I'm looking at you people in chat. There's a follow button down there. There's a subscribe button. Go down there. Let me know what you think. Let me know what else you want to see in the future. I have a Discord. Link for that is in the description if you're on YouTube. Thank you for following finally, Dragonite. Yeah, I will have more stuff for you in the future. So thanks for coming. Thanks for watching and have a good one.